Friend of the show, joining us right now, Sportsnet NFL and fantasy sports analyst Andy McNamara joins us to get more into all these things right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Andy, my friend, how you doing today?
Oh, Josh, doing good, buddy. Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well. And you know what? It's a time of year. We're like in limbo right now because the NFL is a week away still. And teams like, for example, the Eagles just put 3 dudes on the injured reserve list. So it's like these rosters are they're still ebb and flowing. There's still a little bit of interest going on. We have an idea of who these teams are, but we're still kind of formulating exactly what they are.
Exactly, right? This is, I think a good way to put it was on cutdown day, that was the initial 53-man roster, not the final 53, because players will come available that teams like, and then you swap guys out, or teams waited on certain players to put on injured reserve after cutdown day because that means they could bring them back. If they were put on IR before that, they're guaranteed gone for the year. So a lot of jostling for position and just seeing who's out there, any possible trades, cuts, and all that, and who sort of shakes out. So, yeah, there are some moving parts. I think the heavy lifting is done. Like the big Cam Newton news is probably the biggest one of them all. I don't see anything outside of an injury causing that much of a stir. So it's more of those like back end, the 50 to 53 guys on the roster.
I'm glad you started there because one of the conversations we had yesterday on the show was, all the quarterbacks are favorites for Rookie of the Year. And someone messaged the show and said, hey, man, none of those guys won the Heisman Trophy. Devonta Smith won the Heisman Trophy last year. So when you're looking at Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, Justin Fields is a favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. He hasn't even starting week 1, right? Trey Lance might even play week 1 because apparently he has a chip in his finger. He can't even grip the ball properly right now. He's a favorite. Devonta Smith is plus 2,000 odds to win Rookie of the Year, right? Najee Harris is plus 900 odds, right? So, when you're looking at these young players, for lack of a better term, what kind of handicap do you put on them? How do you evaluate them in terms of not just regular football, but fantasy football? Because we know that evaluation comes to young players. It's so dependent on their environment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It depends. Just take, for example, Josh Allen with the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, with how raw he was entering the NFL, the rawest of any of those star quarterbacks coming out of that draft class, if he went, I feel, to just about any other situation in the NFL for a team that needed an immediate starter, he would have failed. He would have burned out. If he went to the Cardinals like Josh Rosen, I don't know. I think he'd be in the same type of situation. But he went to a stable environment that kept grooming him, bringing him along, and now he's a star. You're so right. It depends on environment, landing spot, and situation. So when we look at all these players for Rookie of the Year, there's obviously an advantage to being a quarterback, right? That's the sexy position. Justin Herbert showed last year you don't have to be an immediate day one starter to win Rookie of the Year. Took a Tyrod Taylor, Dr. Needle to the lung to get him in there. So weird stuff can happen. But if I'm looking overall, it just seems, Josh, like it would take a lot for a non-quarterback to win the Rookie of the Year. So obviously, look at Trevor Lawrence. He's the first overall pick. Hot guy. Am I trusting Zach Wilson can do it with the Jets? No. Justin Fields and Trey Lance, like you said, how far do they get in? Now, if they get in game 2, you got a whole season to rock and roll, just like Justin Herbert. But that's the unknown when you're putting down some dollars right now on preseason bets.
The Eagles, we know and we expect who the players are, right?
Yeah.
We've been told Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback. Thank goodness that's out of the way. Devonta Smith, he looked amazing in a couple preseason snaps, right? We know Jalen Reagor's explosive. Zach Ertz says he wants to be a Philadelphia Eagle for life. He's back with Goddard out there, right? But this is an offense no one's ever seen before. Nobody knows what the Nick Sirianni offense is. We have theories. We know what Indianapolis was. The Chargers were. Shane Steichen's there now from the Chargers as well. He had Justin Herbert last year. Also, Sirianni had not one, not two, but 3 different quarterbacks in Indianapolis. So what do you do with an Eagles offense that we've never seen before?
Well, when it comes to your fantasy football team, that's the big what if, right, Josh? You're based, and this is the tricky part year over year. You can't, if you have a change, you cannot go on past performance. You can't necessarily say, Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz are going to be the 1-2 as receivers. Now, do I think they will? I do, but we don't definitely know until the season goes, right? How is Jalen Hurts going to look after the little bit of time he had last year? nice offseason. We've talked many times on the show how we both believe in Jalen Hurts, and I think he is going to take a step forward, but how is he used? So on your fantasy football side, are they going to let him loose to literally run wild? Are they going to try to keep him in the pocket and slowly develop him? Are they going to open up portions of the playbook? If they open up more, when do they? And so all those question marks, I still think that you have to look at when it comes to talent. Miles Sanders is still the top fantasy option there when it comes to the running backs, obviously. But boy, Kenneth Gainwell, kind of like I feel, Josh, I know what Boston Scott is. I know Boston, he's going to come in once in a while. Kenneth Gainwell is the tricky one. For redraft leagues, that's the one, like partway through the year, I can see him siphoning some snaps.
Well, here's another with the running backs. So almost every Eagles insider who covers the team said that Jordan Howard is going to make the roster. Mm-hmm. Well, he didn't make the roster, but he's on the practice squad. And for the first couple of weeks, you can call guys up for the practice squad. You can do it 2 to 3 times, but then you have to put on the regular roster. So, is Jordan Howard going to be called up on game day last minute? And if you're somebody who went and gained Kenneth Gainwell late in your fantasy draft, right? Or you're someone who got Miles Sanders in maybe the second round, and Jordan Howard shows up on game day as an active call-up for the practice squad, you're probably sweating it out, right?
First of all, no, don't do it, no. That I feel Jordan Howard is the break glass in case of emergency type of running back. Listen, if you can have a guy with the history he's had, he's not going to lead the league in rushing, but that's a quality back. That's a decent back to have on your practice squad, right? That he's fine. I just can't see a world why, unless there's injury or some discipline act that we don't know about, why you would bring up a Jordan Howard and take snaps away from the rookie. Draft capital is a real thing, folks, right? If you draft a guy, there is capital attached to it. There is your name as a front office attached to that player. So why you would not try to get Kenneth Gainwell more work rather than bring up a Jordan Howard for a situation wouldn't make much sense in my eyes. But yeah, heck, he's there. Like if Miles Sanders goes down, it might not just be Gainwell's field. Then maybe you bring up a Jordan Howard and you mix and match.
Andy McNamara joining us here on Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. I'm going to say Game Night because I am also the host of it, but I'm here filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN at AndyMC81 on Twitter. The other side of it is I've heard a lot of people giving people advice. Jalen Hurts might not be your QB1, but you need him on your roster because he can throw the ball, he can run the ball, he doesn't throw any interceptions. He's someone who's not going to be a risky QB2. So if you're in a league that you need at least one backup quarterback, or maybe you're in a league that starts 2 quarterbacks, right? We have those leagues out there. Is Jalen Hurts a good QB2 to you?
100%. And Josh, I'll tell you this, if you're looking at ADP, your average draft position in fantasy drafts, overall, in general, this is big picture, right? Jalen Hurts is a QB12. That means Jalen Hurts in many, 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 many leagues is being taken as the 12th quarterback off the board, which means in your typical redraft, that makes him a QB1. Now, for me, I'd feel much more comfortable having him as my second in a 2-quarterback league, or one of my strategies that I always try to do in every draft is try to get 2 quarterbacks, because then I have bye week coverage and I have trade bait if need be. In my drafts, I 100% want to make sure I try to get some shares of Jalen Hurts. I do. I just feel like even if he's not your one, if you go and let's say you even get a Ryan Tannehill or a Russell Wilson, whatever type of thing, I still want Hurts on my roster because of what I said, bye week cover up or trade bait. We fully believe in him, and I think we're going to see it. But like you said earlier, we don't know. This isn't the guy who's done it for 10 years, right? We don't know, so there is that risk associated with it.
Let's stay in the NFC East. A little news coming out today from the New York Giants, Andy. According to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, Saquon Barkley has a, quote, strong chance, unquote, to play week 1, while Kenny Gainwell returned to practice on Friday. How are you handling 2 guys who do have legit fantasy upside in Barkley and Kenny Golladay? But guess what? They've both been injured.
Well, and the Saquon Barkley thing just terrifies me. Like, Josh, I really hope that at my point in the draft, whatever draft I'm in, that Saquon Barkley is either gone or I have a much easier decision to make. Because we know when Saquon Barkley is healthy, which has not been often, but when he is not arguably, he is one of the best 2 or 3 backs in all of football. no doubt. However, he has not been healthy. And it's not just, he's banged up a little bit. 2 serious ligament injuries in consecutive years. I don't care if his legs are as big as my house, Josh. I don't care. That's great. Then go into bodybuilding, pal. Your ligaments inside aren't strong. I don't know how you strengthen those, but they're not. Something's not right. So, okay, he starts week 1. Even if he doesn't, you want to be in a position where you're RB1. You are holding your breath on every single offensive snap for the New York Giants. That's where I get concerned. So if you do, and if the draft falls to you and you think, okay, Saquon Barkley is the best value over the best tight end or receiver, et cetera, that's fine. But I would just make sure that I am loading up as far as I have a strong RB2. I have depth there. Maybe I'm looking Devontae Booker as the handcuff a little bit later on, but that would just get turned into a full-blown committee. And the Kenny Golladay thing, Kenny's, he's banged up last year too. With that quarterback situation, I don't love it with Daniel Jones. So I personally would be looking at Golladay as more of a low NWR2 myself, but I wouldn't necessarily be overly concerned with drafting him. Like, it wouldn't prevent me necessarily between him and somebody else in that sort of tier 2 level.
Let's head down to Washington. Ron Rivera says he's very confident Chris Samuel will play week 1. Good news. Bad news. Your quarterback is the most inconsistent player in the NFL, Ryan Fitzpatrick. So Washington's offense had the law firm last year, right? It was Haskins, it was Kyle Allen, it was Taylor Heineke, it was Alex Smith. It was a law firm out there basically playing quarterback. Yep. This year, it's Fitzmagic. So how do you feel about the Washington football offense?
Oh, boy. And that's the thing with Fitz. Josh, I feel like we know how this is going to go. The first month of the year, Fitzpatrick's going to come out. He's going to light it up. He's throwing 400 yards. He's running in for touchdowns, and people are like, oh, Fitzmagic. And then come week 5, week 6, things start to trend downward, and then you have a disaster 3-interception game, and then you're like, well, now we need Taylor Heineke. Oh, we need Heineke. We know how this goes. So that's why for me, again, if I was looking at, I don't necessarily not want Ryan Fitzpatrick on my team, but I would do it in a strategy. And the reason is, when he's clicking, it opens that whole offense up. It opens it up for McLaurin, for Samuel, Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson, opens it all up. No more dinking and dunking. So if I was to get Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he follows the same pattern that he does for many years now, what I would do is have him as my backup and try to sell high. Try to sell Ryan Fitzpatrick. Get in on the first wave of trades in your fantasy league in the first month. Every time he has a good game, pop him out on that trade wire. Try to collect on Ryan Fitzpatrick, because there's a reason he's been on 1,000 teams throughout his career, right? There's a reason, and it's because he can't do it consistently. So that'd be my advice. Try to get him, because I think he could provide some nice trade capital early in the season, as long as you don't wait too long.
Let's head to Dallas. Look, we all know Ezekiel Elliott's the number 1 back down there, right?
Yeah.
But in a lot of drafts, people like to get Tony Pollard as the handcuff, just in case, right?
Just in case.
To have Pollard just in case. Well, the problem is the Cowboys just signed Corey Clement. And we know what Corey Clement's infamous for. He led the 2017 Eagles in rushing touchdowns on a team with LeGarrette Blount, Jay Ajayi, and all those backs. He led them in rushing touchdowns. So if Zeke goes down, I got to wonder, is Tony Pollard the handcuff? Does that lose value because Clement might vulture him?
No, it's a great point. It's a great point. Clement is there, and it's scary because he's, like you said, he's a vulture. So do I feel Tony Pollard he looked good last year when he flashed, right when he got the chance. I thought Tony Pollard looked good. I liked him a couple years ago coming out of the draft as a bit of a change of pace guy. But what does Corey Clement do? I think it definitely downgrades his touchdown upside for sure if Zeke went down. I still feel overall Pollard is the one you want as far as if you're going to go handcuff, but he wouldn't be at the top of my list because of the Clement factor. I'd be looking Chuba Hubbard. That's the top handcuff in all fantasy football right now behind Christian McCaffrey. Something happens to him, Chuba Hubbard, Canada's own Chuba Hubbard, big dude back, who the head coach, Matt Rule, his wife told him to draft.
Right.
So he's, remember that? The wife said, okay. So that would be my top handcuff if we're looking at it. Pollard, I still wouldn't mind, but again, this would be somebody I'm keeping on my bench, a break glass in case of emergency, and I do not perfect world, I have Tony Pollard on my team, and I don't have to ever put him into my starting lineup.
Andy McNamara joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN at AndyMC81, Sportsnet, National Fantasy Sports host, analyst, as well as NFL analyst, and of course, friend of Game Night with Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Let's go to a couple other teams around the league that I have concerns about. Because again, people are preparing for the season. We got a week till the season starts, but we got drafts going on. We got people getting ready for people, or maybe already drafted, and Andy, they're sweating because a team like the Ravens right now seem to only have 2 healthy receivers. And one of them is Sammy Watkins, and the other one is Hollywood Brown, who just got back to practice today. Miles Boykin expected to miss at least 3 weeks. Meanwhile, Rashad Bateman going to be out 6 to 8 weeks following core surgery. Are you concerned about the Ravens' offense?
Well, when you look at it, let's be honest. Okay, I know people like to pat Lamar Jackson on the back for, it's the weapons' fault that he can't throw and all that. He runs, okay? The receiver part doesn't concern me. When that went down, if I'm a Ravens fan, I know you got the purple-colored glasses on because you love Lamar Jackson. That doesn't concern me because the strategy for defense is to still get him to throw the football. As long as Mark Andrews is healthy, that's your receiving target. Sammy Watkins, please. We know there's going to be a toe or an ankle. We know. Like you're talking about Vegas odds earlier. Whatever the odds are on a foot-type injury to Sammy Watkins, you're losing. It's all happening. It is. So now you look at the running situation. Well, Lamar Jackson's your top rusher. Yeah, Gus Edwards as the top guy with Justice Hill. Gus Edwards, bowling ball type. Now, I goal line wise, that's where he has some value, but Lamar Jackson can siphon that as well. It's going to be a full-blown committee with J.K. Dobbins out, right? Like Justice Hill, is this his time to finally get an opportunity to flash after being, I believe it was a fourth round pick a couple years ago? You have Tyson Williams. Like this just feels like a bunch of bodies in the backfield when Lamar Jackson is not running. So, Hollywood Brown, he's been calling for the ball for years and he's not getting it. He was complaining the last 2 seasons. So it's still, to me, if I'm looking at it, it's Mark Andrews and it's Lamar Jackson and everybody else on the Ravens for your fantasy team, I wouldn't be too excited about as far as a consistent week in, week out producer.
Overall in the AFC North, how do you rank these offenses? Because I feel like everyone has a demerit against them on some level, right? Big Ben, he's getting old. Joe Burrow has basically you and me blocking for him at this point, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Cleveland Browns, everyone asks, well, Odell Beckham Jr. is back. Do they just go back to running the ball or do they throw the ball more, right? And, of course, we just mentioned Baltimore. So how do you gauge and rank these 4 offenses that are all high profile?
Well, it seems to me for the first time I may have ever been able to say this in my adult life, Josh, that the Cleveland Browns have the best offense in the division. I think it's true. And the reason is, for the first time in Baker Mayfield's career, he has the same head coach and offensive coordinator returning for the next season. First time. And we saw the last half of last season, from weeks 9 onward, through 2 interceptions, something like 15 touchdowns, was phenomenal in that QB-friendly Kevin Stefanski offense, which is not identical, but an offshoot from the Shanahan playbook. It's that little Gary Kubiak, that's who was all in there in the influence. So it is going to be run first. You still have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, but we saw what that does. Kind of, again, like the Tennessee Titans. You have a dominant running game, that opens everything up. So is it going to be OBJ? What does Jarvis Landry do? Austin Hooper, David Njoku's looked phenomenal in camp. Njoku's a guy I want bouncing back, still just 23, 24 years old, 5th year in the league. I want some of him. He's looked tremendous in training camp. So when you look at all that, Dynasty Keeper Leagues, folks, I'm telling you, get yourself Donovan Peoples-Jones if you don't have him already. He's going to replace Odell Beckham Jr. when I believe he leaves next year because of his expensive contract. DPJ, that dude is going to be on the field all the time because he can block as good or better than anybody. And here's a tip-off, Josh. They got rid of Kadarrell Hodge, who ended up signing with the Giants. Kadarrell Hodge has been on this team the last 2 years because he's the best blocking receiver, which tipped the hand of the whole offense that you're going to run. So you get rid of him, you can keep DPJ on the field, who can block, who's been developing amazing chemistry with Baker Mayfield, and who's the tallest receiver, a deep threat, and you can line him up anywhere. So DPJ is another guy to keep an eye on. So I think the Browns are the top offense. Like you said, Big Ben had to throw a ball a ton last year. Older, are they going to smarten up and run the football with rookie Najee Harris? Well, guess what? You have 4 new offensive linemen. And I don't think they're an upgrade over the old 4. So how's that going to work? We talked about the Ravens, and Cincinnati is way too pass heavy. The offensive line, like you said, stinks. Joe Mixon in the backfield, you put him behind a good O-line, he can be a great running back, just didn't get the opportunity. And the O-line is bad. And Joe Burrow has been a little shaky, a little skittish based on that serious knee injury. So while you have all the weapons in Cincinnati, I have to pause and think, where do I want to draft these Bengals receivers on my fantasy team with Joe Burrow, who is not showing confidence in that knee, and what happens if he goes down again? He goes down, that depth chart gets really ugly, really fast in Cincinnati.
The complete opposite of the AFC North is the AFC South. Because in the AFC South, the Jags have a rookie quarterback and a head coach that I'm not still fully sure he's going to work out in the NFL. I mean, every week he says something that the team has to retract at this point. It's getting ridiculous. Ryan Tannehill, even though he's vaccinated, he's been on and off the COVID list almost every few months, it seems like, at this point. So who knows what's going on with the quarterback down in Tennessee. Carson Wentz, he had foot surgery, but he's coming back earlier than expected, which always makes you nervous. By the way, all of his offensive linemen have either been injured or on the COVID list, so who knows who's going to be available for week 1, right? And then, of course, you got the Texans, which are the Texans. So at this point, what do you do with the AFC South?
Boy, the Texans are like, Josh, it's very rarely where I can look at an entire football team, an entire team, and say there's not one player I want on my fantasy team. Not one. I don't want any Houston Texan on my team. Not one. Not as a starter, probably not even as a 2 in there. Just none of it. It's awful. I don't want any piece. So we write off the Texans right away. Scratch off. Not even garbage time points. Like nothing. Not interested. The Colts with Carson Wentz. If Carson Wentz is in there, theoretically, should be a nice looking offense, right? I think with T.Y. Hilton getting banged up a little bit, that upgrades the fantasy relevance of the tight ends again, who we've talked about before, Jack Doyle, and I believe Mo Alley Cox is going to leapfrog him as the year goes on as the number 1 tight end. You like the running backs, right, with Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines and Marlon Mack. The Jags, I feel, for fantasy are going to be garbage time gems. Sort of back to the Blake Bortles days. Remember? They had like Blake Bortles that have you like 4 fantasy points, and it's the fourth quarter. It ends up with 25 because it's just garbage points. That's fine. They all count. So I see Jacksonville sort of being in that vein. The Titans I have more confidence in. I really feel that addition of Julio Jones, now, like you said, assuming Tannehill and everybody else stays off the COVID list and all that and injuries, but you add Julio Jones, A.J. Brown cannot be double-teamed. You're not going to double-team Julio Jones at this point in his career. He falls to a more comfortable WR2 level where he's going to be seeing secondary coverage. Oh, yeah, you got that man-beast bowling ball Derrick Henry in the backfield. You're going to stack the box. A.J. or Julio's going to beat you. You want to spread out? Henry's going to run through you. So I feel the Titans, as long as they can stay off the COVID list as much as possible, are probably going to be the class of that division, which, again, isn't really saying much.
By the way, Ryan Suckup just came off the COVID list today for the Bucs. Because I don't know if you heard this story. So after joint practices with the Bucs and the Titans, he went to dinner with a bunch of his friends because he used to play for the Titans, right? And
right.
So he was a part of the COVID group that all got COVID listed, right? And he just came off the list today. So Bruce Arians goes out of his way to tell the media, oh, by the way, the whole team's vaccinated. Like, all right,
just
bro. Just in case we're worried about your vaccination status.
Yeah, just in case you're worried about the status. Yeah. Oh, God, what a mess.
Speaking of the Bucs, let's flip over to the NFC South before I let you go. Listen, I think the most fascinating team in the NFL this year is the Saints because Jameis Winston could either go out there and throw 35 touchdowns and 5,000 passing yards, or he could throw 4,000 passing yards and 25 interceptions. I don't know what we're getting from Jameis this year. And I'm fascinated because this is supposed to be the mature Jameis, the better Jameis, the mentor Jameis, the fill in the blank. And it's like, he's still, like, I would love to, like, sit down, like, hang out with Jameis Winston. He seems to be the most strange individual in the NFL to me because, like, on one hand, the dude has some of the greatest arm talent I've ever seen. But on the other hand, his mind seems to be sometimes in a different world.
Right. Yeah. Most interesting man in the universe. If you could have a sit down, maybe supervise. I don't know if I'd want to be one-on-one with James because he can be a little wonky. So, In a crowded room, yes. But yeah, like for Jameis, remember, Josh, he had the laser eye surgery. We haven't seen him as a starter since that. All kidding aside, like, did that have some? I don't know. Maybe that helps him. Maybe. How much did you drink in from Drew Brees? And then also, maybe that maturity shows up at first when things are going well in a game. What happens when you're under pressure? Tendency for humans is to revert back to the comfort level, which for Jameis is to just sling it wherever he wants. And that could be, the question is too, who the heck's he throwing it to? You don't got Michael Thomas. Traquan Smith's a bit banged up. Are we loving Marquez Callaway? Deontay Harris? Woo. Like, outside of Alvin Kamara, really, and maybe, you got Adam Troutman, the rookie tight end. I never like counting on rookie tight ends. So really, it's Alvin Kamara. And then, again, like maybe Jameis Winston. I think that'd be a fun late-round pick to have on your football team just to see what's up, and maybe it pays off. But, boy, this year, like, Josh, outside of Alvin Kamara, is there anybody that jumps off the page to you that you're like, ooh, yeah, I got to have that guy? I think the fantasy big-time days of the Saints, at least for this year, is over.
Really quick, do you stash Taysom Hill on your bench?
Oh, I hate Taysom Hill for fantasy. I really do. And I feel like I dislike the man, Josh, because of the fantasy turmoil he caused. Like, I feel like if I met Taysom Hill, I would dislike the man. That's not fair. That's not fair. No, Taysom Hill's probably a nice gentleman, I'm sure. But I dislike him so much because he ruins fantasy teams. That's like, it drives me nuts. You know what? For Taysom Hill, like, that's, unless there's an injury or Jameis Winston fully falls off, I just see him being in that weird scatter role that Sean Payton has him in, and you're going to be swearing at your television because he steals fantasy points for you that could have gone to someone else. So I personally am not, because I do not want to enable Taysom Hill, Josh. I don't want to enable him. I don't want to root for him because him and Sean Payton hate fantasy football, and I want no part of it.
For more of these takes, go follow Andy MC81 on Twitter, Sportsnet National Fantasy Sports host and analyst, and NFL analyst for us here on 97.3 ESPN. Andy, always appreciate the conversation. Great stuff, and we'll be talking with you weekly moving forward as we get people ready each week for their fantasy football weeks, because week 1 is literally next Thursday.
So good. Josh, you know what? I can't wait to be on with you every week. And I'll say this. Hey, if people want to try to win a copy of the new EA Sports Madden 22, you can enter on Instagram at the UFAFL. Go there at the UFAFL for your chance to win a copy of Madden 22. That's for your listeners, Josh. I'm just putting that out there for you guys. So go get it.
What is in your left hand over there?
Oh, it's a squeezy football. Brown football.
Okay. Yeah. Because literally,
when I start talking about Taysom Hill, Josh, I get mad, and I just have to squeeze something, and I can't squeeze Taysom's face, so I got to do that.
I was going to say, because we went through this entire segment, you had nothing in your left hand, and all of a sudden, it's this ball that shows up in your left hand.
It's the tension ball that when I talk about Taysom Hill or the Saints, it drives me nuts, and I just got to,
Taysom Hill tension ball.
Yep.
Brought to you by Andy McNamara.
I'll see you later, buddy.
All right, Andy. Andy McNamara. There's no one better. That was great. I mean, literally, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at him the entire interview because we're the virtual connection, right, in the virtual studio here on 97.3 ESPN. And he goes the entire interview, the whole segment, and out of nowhere, he's got a ball in his hand. I'm like, wait, what? Where did that thing come from? Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, we're going to get back to your guys' messages on the other side. I got to get myself back together here. 97.3 ESPN FM.